The crypto market is blowing up right now, melting people's faces. We are seeing gains that we have not seen in years on some altcoins. And it got me thinking, when am I going to sell? Now, I've put out plans in the past before, but I want to give you my most updated plan as to when I plan on dollar cost averaging out of the market or selling completely, what I'm going to sell, when I'm going to sell it, what I'll be looking at. And of course, I can always change my opinion. I can always change what I plan to do, but I thought this was a good time to start thinking about it because crypto gains have been nuts recently. Bitcoin's up 71% in the last 90 days. Altcoins like Solana are up 20% this week. Cardano's up 53% this week. Some cryptos are going absolutely nuts. I've talked about CeDeFi a lot. They're up to $4. They're up 81% this week after they were up like 80% the week before and the week before and the week before. So there are a lot of cryptos that are blowing up right now. Now, do I think this is the blow off top? No. Now we could always fall down, right? But I don't think this is the end of the bull market or anything like that. But I do want to set out my plan when I have a clear head, when we're not at all-time highs. I don't want to try to make a plan then. I want to make it when I'm not feeling as greedy and I can think clearly. So this is not going to be the right plan for everyone. Some people are going to diamond hand all the way down. They're going to hold all their altcoins. They're going to buy. People are going to want to hear about what cryptos to buy at the very top. And then they will get dumped on by probably us, honestly. You, me, the people that have been around for years or at least throughout the bear market or early parts of the bull market will probably be the ones selling on them, which is just what's going to happen, right? We buy to make money, and eventually, if we get enough gains, we're going to sell. So I want to talk about that here today. It's not always the most popular type of video. Everyone wants to know what to buy, not when to sell, but this will be important. Now, with that being said, I have been getting some extra gains, even past what we see here on the platform Margex. I know you can see this back end. I was actually just showing in my last video, how quickly it is to talk to them. Like there's a little chat button down by where my face is. And I said, hey, I have an issue. They responded within, I think it was 10 seconds. And it's a real person. But I've been also trading on there. They have great support. They're a boutique exchange, as they like to say. But I've also been trading. I have some nice gains here. These are just newer positions. Like the last few days, I've been setting these up. I've had other positions open that have made hundreds of percent. I also have positions open on Blofin as well underneath the video. They have 270 plus trading pairs, and they use Fireblocks, which is an industry-leading custodial platform. They also give bonuses. Both of these companies give bonuses when you sign up and deposit to cover some of the fees or to have a futures bonus, that kind of thing. So definitely check those out underneath the video. Like I said, face melting gains. People are getting greedy. People are jumping in for the first time. People that had money on the sidelines are getting in. Now, I still think there are so many catalysts that I am not selling. I'm not selling, just flat out. I am accumulating. Now, I'm not actively buying a lot of cryptos. Now, there have been a couple smaller ones that I actually bought recently, but I am getting paid for a lot of things in Bitcoin and crypto, and I'm keeping it in crypto. Now, I think this is a good time, though, to look at when we might want to sell. As I said earlier, we are seeing some new investors come into the market. Like I've seen people rejoin my Patreon, people that hadn't been in the Patreon for a year, 2 years, they're starting to rejoin. They're starting to get interested in the market. So that tells me that we are heading towards the next bull run. I still think we have a lot further to run. Let me be clear on that. I don't want people to say that I'm bearish on the market. That's not what's happening. I still think we have further to run, but I want to start looking at what I will be looking for when we have, when we are further into the bull run. What will I be looking at to tell me when to sell? First thing I want to know is, are we in the second quadrant on the rational root chart? Now, what is that? I've done a full video on this before. I talked about this Bitcoin chart to explain it a lot more. But basically, it shows over time when the peaks and the valleys are. The peaks for the market and the bottoms of the market. Now, this is the halving right here. We are here. We are getting closer. Every circle is one full halving. So it shows we are less than 6 months away to the halving. Now, when we typically peak is in the second quadrant. Quadrant? I'm not sure. In the second quadrant over here. So that tells you usually it's a full year plus after the halving. And typically it's about a year and a half is the exact peak. Now, we have peaked before. Like back here, this earlier halving, after the first one, we peaked out just a year and a few months after the halving. So I'll be looking the entire time we're in this quadrant, and that will be one sign for me that it will be time to start dollar cost averaging out. Now, we are moving faster than previous market cycles. We are pretty darn close actually to the top, to the previous top. We're like 2/3 of the way there. So we could hit all-time highs before halving. That seems likely. Now, we haven't seen that much in the past. We actually haven't seen the last 3 cycles. It took about 2 to 3 months into the halving, sometimes 6-7 months after the halving, to start hitting all-time highs. These blue dots are all-time highs. So we may peak out a little bit earlier. So that's why I say I'm going to start seriously looking at selling when we are at this 1 year mark after the halving. Now, there are other things I'm looking at too. Just because we are not in this quadrant doesn't necessarily mean that I'm for sure diamond handing all my positions. Let me explain. There are some other criteria, some other catalysts that we're waiting on. For example, if CPI inflation stays under 3% for 3 months or for 6 months in a row, this is kind of arbitrary, but this is a good thing that I'm looking at. Like my rationale is if we stay below there for 6 months in a row, the Fed is probably not as hawkish, which means that rates can be lowered, specifically if the Fed fund rate is under 3.5%. Why do I give that exact amount? Well, that's about where we were. It's a little bit higher than where we were, about 1% higher than where we were in December. I think it was December of 2019, right before COVID. So if we start to get around that rate, they may start to hold back on lowering rates more. That's about 1.5% to 2% below where we are right now. So if we are around that point, I think maybe the Fed eases off, lowering rates more. Also, if money market money is flooding into the market, we have record amounts of this right now. So if we have $1 trillion plus start flooding into the market and it's leaving the money market funds, that will be a sign that we're probably getting a little bit frothy. Spot ETF is approved. I think this is likely to happen probably in the next month, but that's something else that I'll be looking for because a lot of people are waiting for that catalyst. Countries start buying Bitcoin, right? If we get more and more countries announcing that they're buying Bitcoin, or if there are more large public companies that are going to buy Bitcoin. And also, if global liquidity spikes. So that's one other thing that I'll be looking at. Of course, that's a little bit arbitrary. I did not give a specific number to that, like what constitute as a spike, but these are some of the things I'll be looking at. Now, this is great, but if one thing gets triggered, like if the spot ETF is approved, does that mean I'm going to sell? No, not at all. So if multiple steps in 2 through 8 now are triggered or are true, and they happen before number 1. So basically, if we start seeing CPI come down really quickly, rates are lowered aggressively, money market fund money is flooding into the market, the spot ETF is approved, a bunch of countries start buying Bitcoin, a bunch of public companies start buying Bitcoin, and if global liquidity spikes, if all of those happen or a good portion of those happen before we are in this second quadrant in terms of the halving, if this all happens next year, 2024, or beginning of 2025, I'll consider selling. Like I said here, it might make sense to take gains depending on the prices. If all that stuff happens and Bitcoin's still at $70,000, I think there's an issue. I think there's something wrong. It could just be that it's a slow trickle, but at this rate, if that stuff were to happen, I think that it would push up the price very quickly, right? So I think that some of these things will happen next year. Then I also think some will take until that second quadrant. So if we are in that second quadrant, if it's over a year after the halving, or if 1 is true, which is we are in the second quadrant, then 2 through 8 should be examined. If multiple are true, like if we get 3 or 4 of these things happening, money is flooding into the market, countries are buying Bitcoin, companies buying Bitcoin, it should definitely be time to take some profits, right? Like if all the catalysts are happening, we're going to feel really bullish, but it's still probably time to take profits. You notice that I'm not waiting for a specific price for Bitcoin. The problem with waiting for specific prices, we don't know if it will ever hit. For example, we could have all the catalysts happen, and instead of getting to 100,000, we get to 99,000. Do you really want to wait to see a specific price before you get out? Or do you want to look at what's actually happening in the market? What catalysts have already happened? What are people doing? And then just work off of that. I think that makes a lot more sense because it's impossible to tell whether we're going to do a 6x on Bitcoin, an 8x, a 4x. And I think it makes more sense to look at it this way. If 1 is true and multiple 2 through 8 are not true, then it may be worth waiting a little bit longer. For example, if we're in the second quadrant and yeah, the spot ETF is approved, but money hasn't really started flooding into the market. CPI is maybe 3%, then goes up to 3.2 and then 2.8. Rates aren't really being lowered. No one's quite buying. Then it may be worth waiting a little bit longer. So maybe that starts happening instead of right in quadrant 2, like right when we get there. Maybe it happens a couple months further in, like where we see here a bunch of all-time highs, these blue dots. Even here, we had a peak, we waited a while, there's nothing happening, and then we had another peak. So if that happens, if we don't have a lot of those catalysts actually panning out, maybe it's worth holding on a little bit longer. Now, I think this is probably the most likely scenario. We get some things that happen next year, but then we go into quadrant 2, and then more things happen. We start to see the Fed lower rates a little bit quicker. We see more and more money flooding into the market. We see this massive bull run. People are starting to get really greedy, in which case then I will start selling probably right at the beginning of that year. So a year and 4 months from now. And I plan on selling pretty much all my altcoins. I plan on selling about 50% of crypto-related stocks, maybe a little bit more. They're going to be ones that are really frothy. They have moved up a huge amount. I plan on selling some of those, booking the profits. And then maybe I will take profits on Bitcoin if it's life-changing money. Let's say I can retire, feel super comfortable because I have enough in Bitcoin that if I take 10 or 20% profits, I can get to that lifestyle. I hope that makes sense. But basically, if I have life-changing money that's in Bitcoin and I can take some of those profits and just my life is changed forever, then I will take some of them. If I'm already extremely rich from my altcoin positions and income is good, and then I have more money than I actually need, and I can already have that life-changing money and keep my Bitcoin as Bitcoin, then I'll do that. I might take a little bit off the table, but probably not in that scenario, unless we are just so frothy, right? If Bitcoin hits $500,000, I'll probably take some off the table. If it hits $300,000, I'll probably take some off the table. But again, I'll have massive gains probably in altcoins and other crypto-related stocks. I won't have to take all that much in Bitcoin. So my goal is to sell those over, hopefully, this first probably 9-month to 12-month period in this quadrant. So I'm guessing I'll probably start selling alts, selling some Bitcoin right at the beginning of this, and then try to sell it, time it out. So maybe every 2 weeks, I sell a portion of what I want to sell for the year. So every 2 weeks, 26 2-week periods in a year, maybe I sell 26 times or about 4% every single week or every other week. So I try to span it out. Now I'm not going to hit the exact top. I'm not trying to hit the exact top. We're going to be at all-time highs on a lot of altcoins. Here, we're going to be at some all-time highs for some altcoins over here even, right? Bitcoin peaked, and then we still had altcoins run a little bit. So we could see altcoins peak out over here or over here. There's no way of really knowing, which is why I want to sell out over a span of time. I'm not trying to time the exact top. I'm trying to make life-changing profits and book them, actually take profits on them. So let me know your thoughts on this underneath the video. Let me know if this is something that you're planning on, if you like this explanation. Some people that I've talked to recently said, hey, I'm just going to try to keep my cash at let's say 20%. So if my portfolio goes up exponentially, I'm going to take some profits. For me, I understand that process, but also I don't know if it's the best process for me. And that might just be because we all have different experiences. We have different portfolios. We have different goals. Let me know your thoughts on this underneath the video, though. Let me know what you plan on doing. Again, you can check out Margex and Blofin underneath the video as well. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.